For years, the Epstein scandal raised questions about power and accountability. Now, a sweeping release of Justice Department records is raising them again, this time about former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and newly released records referencing continued contact after Epstein's conviction. And this, as the Thames Valley Police confirmed, they are assessing a complaint over the possible sharing of confidential trade information with Jeffrey Epstein. We are breaking down what the documents show, how the royal connection evolved, and why the scrutiny is escalating now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now, by the way, if you're putting things out on social media, if you're into content creation, if you're wondering how we put so many of these clips out there so quickly, we use something called Opus Clip. This is an all-in-one AI editor that makes it so easy to cut, create, and upload videos across any platform. Through AI, Opus Clip generates B-roll, it reframes footage, and it even cleans up audio. It is so easy. You just visit opus.pro/sidebar, you sign up, you upload, and in minutes you have perfectly edited clips ready to go. For TikTok, Shorts, Reels, Opus Clip is your one-stop shop. And having a tool like Opus Clip means that our producers can get you viral courtroom updates instantly. This is the most powerful tool there is to share ideas and edit like a pro. So go to opus.pro/sidebar to get a free week and then 50% off. As we continue to dig deeper into the Epstein story, we keep hearing the same phrase, dark secrets coming to light. And one of those secrets has centered around the royals, the UK. We hear a lot about it, right? For more than a decade, the name Jeffrey Epstein has been synonymous with one of the most disturbing abuse scandals in modern history, a case that touched politicians, financiers, royalty. And in the United Kingdom, that is what we got to talk about, because no name has loomed larger in this shadow than former Prince Andrew, the brother of the king. That is what we want to focus on right now, because there is so much talk about Andrew and what came out and the fallout in the royal family that we thought, let's make sense of it all, right? Because you hear a lot about it, it's confusing. And with this sweeping release of documents, which we have been dissecting almost every day, thousands of pages of emails, photographs, internal communications, all now in public view, it raises a lot of questions, and we are seeing the fallout. But here's one we want to focus on. How did a convicted sex offender maintain what appears to have been an ongoing, maybe even advisory relationship with a senior member of the British royal family after his conviction? Why do some of these documents seemingly reference communications that touch on sensitive government matters? And why are these questions being asked seriously now? Oh, and by the way, with all this coming out about Andrew, in another stunning development, the palace has now responded. King Charles III has issued a statement, a move that marks a notable shift in tone and strategy. So that's what we want to get into, and we're going to get into it right now. So for decades, it was clear from all of the materials and evidence so far that Jeffrey Epstein moved easily through elite circles, hosting lavish gatherings, cultivating influential relationships, presenting himself as a man of extraordinary access. But in 2008, that facade cracked. That is when Epstein pled guilty to Florida state charges, one count of soliciting prostitution and one count of soliciting prostitution from someone under the age of 18. And as part of this sweetheart deal that you hear so much about, he served just 13 months. He was able to avoid federal charges. It was a work release program, remember that? And again, very, very controversial. And it seems that even after that happened, even after what he was accused of, even after what he pled guilty to, yes, there were people who severed ties with him. We can see that. But not everybody. One of the figures who did not publicly distance himself was Prince Andrew. Andrew's association with Epstein dated back to at least the 1990s, introduced through Epstein's longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who, as we know, was already convicted of her own sex trafficking charges, sentenced to 20 years in prison. But there was documentation between Epstein and Andrew. For example, there was a photograph of the two of them walking together in Central Park, reports of Andrew staying at Epstein's Manhattan mansion, accounts of Epstein visiting royal property. For years, this relationship was framed as a serious lapse in judgment and embarrassment, but ultimately just a personal mistake. That seemed to change a little bit in 2015. Why? Because it was that year that Virginia Giuffre, this apparent survivor of Jeffrey Epstein, went public with a civil lawsuit, and she alleged that Epstein and Maxwell trafficked her and that she was forced to have sex with Andrew on 3 occasions, including when she was 17. And her allegations were detailed, they were specific. Now, to be clear, Andrew categorically denied them, denying not only the allegations, but even ever meeting Giuffre. It's complicated by the fact that there was a photograph of apparently the two of them together that has been widely circulated, although he seemed to suggest, per the BBC, that he thought that photo might have been doctored or fake in some way. But again, he was never brought up on any kind of criminal charges with respect to this or anything to do with Epstein. You fast forward to 2019. Andrew attempted to counter the narrative publicly in a now infamous BBC Newsnight interview. Instead, I would just say probably proved to be a little more problematic than he thought it would be. His explanations came under a lot of scrutiny, like the claim that, hey, I couldn't have done anything with Giuffre because I was at a Pizza Express that evening at a children's party. Or remember when he tried to refute Giuffre's claim that he was sweating heavily dancing at a bar with her because he said he has this or he had this obscure medical condition or he didn't sweat? Yeah. So what happens? Queen Elizabeth forced her son to step back from public duties. His charities, military affiliations, they were ultimately stripped away. The damage was severe. And the story escalated again, because in July of 2019, Epstein was arrested on federal sex trafficking charges in New York. 1 month later, he died in his jail cell. But that wasn't the end of it. No, the legal reckoning didn't end with his death. 2021, Virginia Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit against Prince Andrew, then Prince Andrew, in U.S. federal court. And facing the prospect of a very public trial, Andrew reportedly settled the case in 2022 for an undisclosed sum directed to Giuffre's charity. Now, the settlement included apparently no admission of liability, but it did cement Andrew's isolation. He seemingly withdrew almost entirely from public life, seemingly was living a quiet life at Royal Lodge in Windsor, and for a time it appeared the story maybe reached its conclusion. Not quite. For years, the U.S. Department of Justice, the DOJ, held an enormous cache of investigative material from the Epstein case, victim statements, flight logs, tens of thousands of communications. And in late 2025, the Epstein Files Transparency Act forced the DOJ to begin releasing those records. Again, all the Epstein investigative materials in their possession, something that we've been covering religiously here on Sidebar. And the release was staggering, millions of pages. This wasn't interpretation, this wasn't rumor, it was raw material to be examined. And as we looked at these files, there was one set of documents that stood out. These email communications between Epstein and a contact identified as the Duke. Messages dated 2010 after, again, Epstein's conviction, discussing dinner plans, introductions, and most strikingly, emails in which Andrew allegedly appeared to forward official visit reports from a government trade mission in Southeast Asia directly to Epstein. Because at one point, Andrew was the UK trade envoy. So this shifted the story fundamentally, because these were time-stamped records suggesting an ongoing functional relationship between this convicted sex offender and a senior royal. So the consequences followed quickly. In October of 2025, as Giuffre's posthumous memoir renewed scrutiny and pressure mounted, King Charles took unprecedented action. He initiated the formal process to strip his brother of his remaining style, titles, honors. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was no longer a prince, no longer a duke. He was removed from Royal Lodge, relocated to a smaller residence on the Sandringham estate. And then came the legal shockwave. The disclosure of the trade mission documents prompted a formal complaint to British authorities alleging a potential breach of the Official Secrets Act, legislation designed to protect sensitive government information. And the Thames Valley Police has now confirmed that they are assessing the materials. So for the first time, Andrew was not simply confronting public disgrace or civil litigation. He was facing the possibility of much more serious legal scrutiny. Potentially, are we talking a crime? And that is where the story stands now. So what began as a controversial friendship evolved into a public reckoning, a legal settlement, the loss of royal status, and now a police assessment, triggered not by rumor, but by seemingly documentary evidence emerging from a U.S. court-ordered release. And the ground has shifted completely. So with the police now assessing this, what does that actually mean? More importantly, what are they looking for? This isn't about relitigating Virginia Giuffre's allegations. That was a civil lawsuit. It's been settled. This is something different. This is about documents that we haven't really talked about before. Andrew's official role. So in 2010, when many of those emails were sent, Andrew wasn't just the Duke of York. He was appointed the UK's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment. And this complaint that sparked this police assessment focuses on emails where he appears to send confidential visit reports from official trips to Epstein. And that moves the issue from personal conduct to alleged potential misconduct in public office. So to understand the stakes, to understand what we're talking about, you gotta understand what we're talking about here, the Official Secrets Act. Think of it kind of as the UK's main law against government leaks. For someone in Andrew's position at the time, it can be a crime to make a damaging disclosure of protected information without authorization. What counts as protected information? Things like security secrets, defense plans. Crucially here, international relations. Those trade reports from Southeast Asia, they're all about diplomacy and international deals. That's the international relations category that seemingly we're talking about. So the core question for police now is this: could sharing, or allegedly sharing, those official documents with a private foreign citizen, especially one with Jeffrey Epstein's background and connections, can that be seen as a damaging disclosure that harmed the UK's interests? That's the legal question. That's what they're assessing. So it is critical to kind of be precise about what is happening here, right? So the police statement says that they are, quote, assessing the information. This isn't an abstract concept. The same document dump triggered a separate active police investigation into former British ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson, over similar allegations of sharing sensitive information with Epstein, on top of the fact that he just had apparently weird communications with the guy. But the precedent is being set, okay? So I want to dive into this. I want to get into the emails, and we're going to coin these the Invisible Man emails, because the document release contains a separate set of emails from the early 2000s involving an individual using the email signature, The Invisible Man. Now, the messages span roughly 2001 to 2002. They're addressed primarily to Ghislaine Maxwell. The identity of the sender is not explicitly stated in the release files. However, contextual references within the emails include mentions of royal residences, official schedules, travel that is consistent with Andrew's movements during that period. So for example, in one August 2001 email, the Invisible Man, again, let's presume it's Andrew, we don't know for sure, the Invisible Man writes to Maxwell from what appears to be a royal setting, describing being epimoral and referring to the royal family and the girls, okay, in the context of daily activities. And in that message, the sender writes, quote, I am up here about moral summer camp for the royal family. Activities take place all day and I am totally exhausted at the end of each day. The girls are completely shattered and I will have to give them an early night today as it is getting tiring splitting them up all the time. How's LA? Have you found me some new inappropriate friends? Let me know when you are coming over, as I am free from the 25th of August until the 2nd of September and want to go somewhere hot and sunny with some fun people before having to put my nose firmly to the grindstone for the fall. Any ideas greatly received. See ya, A XXX. And remember, when we talk about girls, Prince Andrew has 2 daughters. Okay, in a separate August 2001 exchange, Maxwell tells the same sender that she has only been able to find appropriate friends, writing, so sorry to disappoint you. However, the truth must be told. I have only been able to find appropriate friends. We'll let you know about some church meetings on those dates. Kisses, GX. And the sender responds, distraught. You probably wouldn't know, but I lost my valet on Thursday. He died in his sleep. He had been with me since I was 2. I'm a little off balance as not only has my office been restructured, I have left the RN and now my whole life is in turmoil as I have no one to look after me. He was a real rock and almost a part of the family. If you have any good ideas as to how to get my mind back on track, I'd be grateful for advice. See you real soon. I hope if you are coming over, A XXX. Got another email from February 2002, so the same sender discusses apparent travel plans to Peru and writes, as far as girls, well, I leave that entirely to you and Juan Esteban. And that message appears in a longer thread that includes a third party, Juan Esteban Ganoza, who writes to Maxwell discussing sightseeing and activities and social arrangements and asks about the girls. How old is he? I doubt it that he will find someone, but we can try. In a further email from March of 2002, Maxwell writes to the same address stating, I just gave Andrew your telephone number. He is interested in seeing the Nazca lines. He can ride, but it is not his favorite sport, i.e. pass on the horses. Some sightseeing, some 2-legged sightseeing, read intelligent, pretty fun, and from good families, and he will be very happy. I know I can rely on you to show him a wonderful time and that you will only introduce him to friends that you can trust and rely on to be friendly and discreet and fun. He does not want to read about any trip in the papers, whom or what he saw. Call me if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can expect a very English-sounding gentleman on the phone to call up and say hi. I told him it would be best if he made his plans directly with you. The only part that I'm jealous about is that he will get to see you and that he will be in Peru and have you as his tour guide for a day. Besos, GX. So those emails don't include explicit descriptions of illegal activity per se, and the release doesn't identify the sender by name. Kind of see why it's questionable, right? And the documents also don't establish whether any of those plans were carried out. But again, a little strange, because what they do provide is kind of this contemporaneous written communication showing Maxwell discussing introductions and travel and, discrete social arrangements, potentially involving Andrew during the same period that were referenced in later allegations. Now you go back to 2010, okay? August 2010. So this is about 2 years after Epstein pled guilty, right? 2008. And the Epstein emails contact identified as the Duke. He writes, I have a friend who I think you might enjoy having dinner with. She will be in London 2024. The next morning, the Duke replies, of course, I am in Geneva until the morning of the 22nd, but would be delighted to see her. Will she be bringing a message from you? Please give her my contact details to get in touch. A month later, in late September 2010, the email thread continues again between Epstein and the Duke address, and in that exchange, Epstein writes, already in London, what time would you like me and redacted name? We will also need to have private time. The Duke appears to respond, alternatively, we could have dinner at Buckingham Palace and lots of privacy. Epstein replies, BP, please. Epstein then adds, I want private time with you. However, I am here with redacted and redacted. Should I bring them all so as to add some life? The Duke responds, yes, plenty of space here for chat. Bring them. December 2010, there's another message from the Duke to Epstein, framed as a holiday note with an attachment. And the text includes, it was great to spend time with my U.S. family. Looking forward to joining you all again soon. I'll call you tomorrow as I am moving the family up to Sandringham during the day. Now, around the same time period, there was another email from the Duke to Epstein that includes this line. Jay, Kate has agreed to a deal in London. It's down to bring you over the line. God, it's cold and dank here. Wish I was still a pet in your family. Also, dated November 3rd, 2010, the release includes an email sent to Andrew by his special advisor, Amit Patel, and it reads, Sir, please find attached the visit reports for Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Shenzhen in relation to your recent visit to Southeast Asia. And that email is relevant because it references official trip materials that were generated during Andrew's tenure as the UK Special Representative for International Trade and Investment. So you go to October of 2013, and Epstein emails, or appears to email, Andrew's aide, David Stern, and the email reads, I have a very beautiful friend coming to London on Tuesday. Andrew might want to have her for a dinner. So the record here reflects communications about introductions and dinner plans continuing after Epstein's conviction. And we don't know if who these people are, the ages, anything like that. But again, see why it doesn't look right? Then you go to April 2017, and Epstein emails a business contact with an offer that seems to reference Windsor Castle. Do you want a dinner invite at Windsor Castle with the top Chinese biz people? May 26. So that email on its face shows that Epstein is presenting himself as somebody able to extend access to that setting. That same release also includes photographs, and you've probably seen these here, described in reporting on showing Andrew on the floor with an unidentified person. The images are undated. The release doesn't provide captions or context. Reporting has noted that the images and the email messages do not by themselves establish wrongdoing, although it is very strange to see this. And we're going to keep that standard here as well, but again, strange. Now, the reason these documents are being examined now is not only the social contact, but it's also Andrew's role at the time, because in 2010, he held that position, right, the special representative, and again, this role connected to official government travel and meetings. In this document set, there are references to what I mentioned before, visit reports and trip materials that appear to have been forwarded to Epstein. That is the core of the complaint that has led the Thames Valley Police to say they're assessing the information. And the document release also includes material from 2015, which directly relates to, again, that long disputed claim by Virginia Giuffre that she met Andrew and was photographed with him in London in 2001. So you have one document. It is a draft statement sent in January of 2015 from an email address identified as Ghislaine Maxwell to Epstein. And the email is labeled draft statement, and it includes the following passage, quote, "In 2001, I was in London when Redacted met a number of friends of mine, including Prince Andrew. A photograph was taken as I imagined she wanted to show it to friends and family. I never asked Redacted to give him a massage." So Giuffre has alleged that she was the person in that photograph. And then you have a separate email from the same period where Maxwell appears to write Epstein, "I have to distance myself from you in statement 2, and they need me to say I was not aware of massage with Andrew in my house." So the release also includes a 2011 internal draft response that was forwarded by Andrew, or allegedly by Andrew, to his staff, which states, quote, "There are two competing issues to deal with. One is to clearly state that this is fabrication, and 2, to distance me from any of this if you can." Now, Andrew has consistently denied Giuffre's allegations. As I mentioned, denied ever meeting her. In that 2019 BBC interview, he questioned the authenticity of that photograph. In 2022, he settles that lawsuit. And just this as an aside to all of this, the document release also includes email exchanges involving Peter Mendelsohn. I mentioned him before, the senior UK politician. And this is in correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein. So you have one email dated July 22nd, 2009. So this is the same day that Epstein was apparently released from prison following his 2008 conviction. And in that exchange, Mendelsohn writes to Epstein from a BlackBerry device, "How is freedom feeling?" Epstein replies earlier the same day, "She feels fresh, firm, and creamy." Later that day, Mendelsohn sends a follow-up message, "Naughty boy." So the release files include also later communications in which Mendelsohn appears to forward or reference government-related material to Jeffrey Epstein, including a message describing as an interesting note that had gone to the Prime Minister. This is the allegation. Now, the documents do not, on their face, establish any kind of criminal conduct. However, these communications are referenced in reporting as the basis for a separate police investigation into Mendelsohn concerning potential misconduct in public office. So we just walked through the timeline, right? We've seen the Invisible Man emails from the early 2000s, Inappropriate Friends. We've read the invite to Buckingham Palace for private time. We've seen the reference to being a pet in Epstein's family. We've seen the 2013 request for a dinner intro, the 2017 offer of a Windsor Castle dinner. And crucially, we've seen the paper trail around Andrew's official role, right? The visit reports, the itineraries. This is the evidence that the Thames Valley Police are now assessing, or it looks like they are, not as gossip, but as a potential serious violation. And I want to bring it back to the Official Secrets Act. Remember, the core question, damaging disclosure. So looking at these documents through that legal lens changes the framing. It's not just, was it wrong for a prince to be friends with Epstein, right? The question becomes, did a Crown servant, the UK's Special Representative for International Trade, improperly share protected government information about international relations with a private foreign citizen? This is also why Mendelsohn's parallel is so critical, because the allegations are strikingly similar. Senior government figure allegedly sharing information with the same private individual. So facing all of this, the royal family began to voice its position. First, you had Prince William and Princess Kate's spokesperson say, "I can confirm the Prince and Princess of Wales have been deeply concerned by the continued revelations. Their thoughts remain focused on the victims." Then, Prince Edward gave a similar statement, also expressing that the family was, quote, "deeply concerned," and that their thoughts and sympathies have been and remain with the victims. But these were expressions of sympathy and personal dismay. They were not addressing the new legal dimension. And with the legal pressure building and the documentary evidence now public, King Charles broke the family's official silence on behalf of the monarchy itself. In a statement issued by Buckingham Palace, the king said, and I'm quoting here, "The king has made clear in words and through unprecedented actions his profound concern at allegations which continue to come to light in respect of Mr. Mountbatten Windsor's conduct. While the specific claims in question are for Mr. Mountbatten Windsor to address, if we are approached by Thames Valley Police, we stand ready to support them as you would expect." Major statement there. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on NBC's Peacock. We got Sidebar episodes up there too. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.